Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to take a look at this Pioneer SX-838. This one showed up locally, and what I'm going to do in this video is basically give this thing a preventative maintenance job. I made a video a year or two ago on how there's lots of transistors inside of this generation of Pioneer receiver that should simply be replaced because they simply go bad often. So we're going to take a look at those in this video and just admire the beauty of this receiver here. Let's take a closer look. Yes, the X3X generation of Pioneer receivers. It's one of my favorite looking generations for sure. This one is the 838, which means it is the lowest size in this chassis here. If I were to put this next to a 636, it would be a lot bigger. So we've got quite a few good controls on here. You know, we've got your typicals right here, but then you got some Dolby stuff. Looks like we're missing a little switch cover there. Got Phono 1 and 2, that's not always common. Microphone's not common either. Then over here you've got turnover switches for your bass and treble. You've got a -20 muting button, I think, and then 3 sets of speakers. And of course, the classic toggle switches. That's what you get with the SX-838. This one's in pretty good shape, as you can see. There weren't too many scratches or blemishes. I've got something right here, I don't really know what that is, that white mark on the microphone switch. Cosmetically excellent condition. Not seeing too much on the sides here. We'll take a look at the back right now. And here's the back. Like I said, connections for 3 sets of speakers. We've got a nice little fuse holder there. And then here's all your inputs and Dolby whatever thingies and stuff and whatnot. Very nice. And then of course we've got this little sticker right here. I actually looked up this address on Google Maps, and you can see it used to be there in about 2008, but it went under with a lot of things that the recession took with it, unfortunately. I don't know, maybe they're in a different building these days, but I doubt it. And then one thing we need to think about as we go into this is that someone's been here, and it's these guys. So if I see anything weird, I know it was them. I am not the first person to go in here. So let's get the cover off. Yeah, the 838 looks kind of goofy up here because you've got this big empty space right here where there would be stuff like on the 1010, but there's not, because this is the lowest model of this chassis size. Now I can already see these guys right here, the 2SC1451s, they have to go. So we'll need to take this all apart and get to those and replace those. Overall, very clean in here. I think we can go ahead and turn this thing on and see if we get a relay click. Check the speaker terminals and then see if we get sound. Put that in right here. And we'll turn this on. And now, let's see what happens. That's a great sign. Relay click? Yes, there is. Yes, so we know our relay click is working, and there's, you can see right there and right there we've got dim spots. The other thing we can do with the X3X is test all of our little indicators down here. So we've got speaker A works, B works, C works, AM works, FM, phono, mic, and aux all work. That's pretty simple right there. Just need a few fuse lamps. Looks like we also might need a dial pointer lamp since that's not turning on. One thing I want to note on this receiver that's unique to it is this FM muting off text is perfectly intact. I am not touching that because the minute I touch that, it's all going to come flaking off. Alright, since we don't appear to be drawing any serious current, that is a good thing. We would know if we were if that were super bright. So I've turned on speaker A. And now I want to check for DC offset at the speaker terminals. So to do that, we take the voltmeter and we set it to DC volts. And we could even go millivolts for fun, but of course we have to push the DC button for that. So speaker A is right here. So I will check the right channel. What do we have? Looks like about 15 millivolts. And then the left channel, we have 14 millivolts. That's actually extremely good. I'm not going to check bias, but I will just put my hand on the heat sink like this and feel if it's warm, and it is not. If this were warm by now, I'd know there's a problem with the bias and we're pulling a lot of current, and that would be lit up too, frankly. So we're all good there. Now, let's go ahead and hook up the speakers. Let's see if we get any sound. Get a small amount of sound. That's because FM muting is turned on, so let me turn that off and bring the volume back up. And there you go. Now we've got our static. Got it out of the left. Got it out of the right too. That's a good thing. Let's see if we can find a station.
Oh, well, I mean, lucky for me, I have an app that shows me exactly how spicy my neighbors are.
And
oh
on
yeah,
that note,
exactly how spicy.
Report's done.
Okay, so with no antenna, FM seems to work great. I like that. Now let's go play everybody's favorite song. We are set to aux. And we've got sound out of only one side. And let me show you that. This is worth seeing. Watch this. As I play with that, I get sound out of that speaker. So that's about as clear a sign as possible that you have a dirty switch. And then, now see, I don't have anything out of that side now. But if I go like that, I can get something. So, in FM we've got stuff. Loudness works. But, yeah, in aux, unfortunately, we've got a very dirty switch. So the first thing we must do with this is clean the switches, because we can't do any testing in aux until that thing is working as it should. It actually looks quite easy to clean what we need to clean, and I'll show you right now. If I zoom in right there, those little box looking things, those are those selector switches right there. So all we got to do is just spray our deoxit right on there, and we should have clean switches pretty quickly here. So let's go ahead and do that. So we got the D5 here because it's just a switch. If it were a pot, I'd use the F5. I'm going to click that. And then there's like a little bit of a circuit board on the bottom. This stuff is really good at kind of working its way into things. Okay, let's see if we get better performance out of our aux now that we've done that. We probably will. Oh, gotta turn the music back on. Yeah, look at that. Yep. Still needs a little bit of work, but now I actually get sound without having to do much. Before, it was a challenge. And yeah, the rest of these still need to be cleaned, as you can hear. I'm just playing with that muting button here. Listen to all that static. So I'll keep going here. I'll get these all cleaned up and we'll keep moving along here. So we're working a lot better. If you're following along doing this yourself, I just want to show you what I did. All I did was I took the D5 nozzle and I put it like in there-ish, and you know, there, and just gave it a little squirt. And another little thing you can do to help you clean the selector switch is you can kind of hold one button in, kind of like this, and then go like this on the one you're trying to exercise, instead of going like, you know, this over and over again. Just Just kind of hold one in and then do that kind of thing. Not bad. So let's continue our examination of this thing. We still need to check underneath because that is where the power supply goes on these receivers. And the 838 and up are known to have cooling issues on their power supply. And I think we're about to see that when we pull this bottom cover here. So what do we got here? We've got the protection circuit, we've got the Phono preamp, and we've got the power supply. And of course these are our tone amps and switchboards and whatever. Of course, very dark right there. It's been getting hot down here. That is what happens down here, folks. There's not much air movement down here, and we got this massive resistor right here, and that's what's getting the hottest. Ouch. So we'll definitely check that one's resistance, make sure it's still up to the task, and we'll check the capacitors too. So let's take a closer look here. You can see right in the center there, the board is very dark in color, and that's mainly due to this resistor right here. Like if I touch it, this was on recently, but it's still a little hot to the touch. And of course these TO220 transistors, they get pretty hot too, but as we can see, this resistor is mostly responsible for the discoloration down here. We've got some big capacitors on here. We'll want to check those with our capacitor checker and make sure that they are still okay. We're not doing a full restoration here, we're just doing kind of a preventative maintenance. It's 50 years old, let's make sure everything's doing okay kind of job here. So I think what I will do now is I will pull the power supply board by pulling up on these pins. And since we're beginning to work on our receiver now, let's unplug it. See there? Now we're safer. And let's go ahead and check our giant filter capacitors for any DC or voltage or whatever. And as we can see, there is nothing there, and there is nothing there. And I would expect that because we have those resistors going across those capacitors. I think that's really what they're for at the end of the day, is they're just bleeder resistors to take down the charge inside of the capacitor when the receiver is turned off to make it safer to be around. You wouldn't want 8,000 microfarads at 50 volts just coming right at you, would you? And speaking of which, let's try these out. See if we get a reading. I don't know if that resistor's going to mess with it. It's not. We're at 6,000 microfarad right there. Unfortunately, that is out of spec. We have a dying filter capacitor on this receiver. And that one's okay. So the general rule of thumb is 20% on here, so 20% of 8,000 is going to be about 1,600. So yeah, that's 8,000 minus 1,600 is 6,400, and we're at 6,100, so that should probably be replaced. Now let's do some similar activities on the power supply board here. So for these, they're kind of easy. You just take some needle nose pliers, pinch these plastic things, and then pull up with your finger, like so. I don't know, maybe you can see that. So there, I've got those free. Then I'll pinch right here with my pliers and lift up with my finger. That one's a little stubborn. Try this one here. Yep. Alright, one more time. Alright, that'll get up there. Oh, we've got one in the middle too. Oh boy. I don't feel like I've seen that before. Well, I must have. I've done a 1010. Okay. There we go. And Pioneer can be great like this sometimes, you know. look how easy this is to work on now. I don't have to do anything. My board's just flopping around and it's good to go. So I'm going to test some capacitors here. I'll let you know if anything's bad. So what I see in the power supply is everything is mostly good. I've got a few reading in circuit / leaky, so I might pull those. These big ones in particular, they're reading okay, but they read interesting. I'll show you. Well, actually, these are 470 microfarad capacitors, and each one of them reads about 974. And that is because they are in parallel with one another, so you're reading each cap together when you read one of them. So 470 plus 470 is 940. 974 in an ESR that low, we're doing pretty okay, so those guys are probably just fine. Let's try this big one off to the side here. I haven't tried that yet. 1000. I think that's okay. I believe that's 1000 microfarad. So the power supply is actually in quite good shape. Let's also check the bottom for cold solder joints. And now I believe I've figured out where the previous people were. I think they were down here because I see on this resistor massive gobs of solder on its leads that would not normally be there. It's also a different color. And let me check this transistor too. Yeah, this transistor looks like it's been replaced, and it's got slightly different text on it, and I think those solder joints are not original. So I think whoever was here resoldered this resistor and replaced this transistor. So good work on them, I guess. Alright, skipping ahead here, I have gone through the power supply and determined that everything is fine. I tested all the capacitors, pulled a few just to see the ones that were reading, kind of interesting, and they all tested fine. They're all within spec, the ESR is all good, so I'm not going to touch the power supply. Then I was talking about how I saw where the other person had been. These right here, those go to that big resistor, and then I think around here they redid those, and then this is that transistor that was replaced right here. So someone's been here, someone's done the things that need to happen here. The power supply is working. Move on to the Phono preamp. I fully restored this one. I know that's kind of weird, why didn't you touch the power supply and you did all this over here? Well, it's because I've actually seen this board fail, and I don't want that happening for this receiver. So I did all new transistors. The 725s were replaced with KSA 992s, and then the what were the 1345s? What was it? Yeah, C1345 right here. Yeah, these little guys. These were replaced with KSC 1845, and there's 4 of those. And then I did audio grade caps for these blue ones. They were blue. And then these used to be orange. Now they've got an audio grade. PW everywhere else. And then over here on the protection circuit, I replaced the 2 transistors in the middle, because if you longtime viewers recall, there was once a Pioneer SX-838 on this channel that had a failed transistor in one of those places, Q1 or 2, I don't remember which one it is, so I replaced those 2. Those 2 are like the very first stop in the circuit for seeing, is there bad stuff happening at the speaker terminals? Those are the first ones to act, so I wanted to replace those since I've seen those fail too. Now, this is like a week or 2 later. I'm editing this video as I go, and I realized I never had my capacitor tester in frame, so let me show you in frame that this capacitor is not okay. That's supposed to be 8,000, and it's measuring at 6,000, so that needs to be replaced. And I got 2 replacements. I upgraded them to a 10,000 microfarad. Yeah, right there. But unfortunately, it didn't come with screws, so now I have to find screws to use with these, and then crimp on little ring terminals to all these wires here, which isn't a huge deal, but we'll get to that as soon as I find screws for the new filter capacitors. Now, next thing to do under here, per se, is take a look at this preamplifier board. We need to remove the faceplate to get that out, and then we can get good access to the lights as well for replacing the fuse lamps. I guess another note on the power supply, leaving it alone. If you watched the SX-750 restoration that I did recently, that power supply almost all the capacitors were in awful shape. They all tested heavily out of spec, so, you know, that one needed it. But so far, this one and its capacitors have all seemed pretty good. And I'm a little surprised by that, you know, based on what we just saw with the SX-750. So, I don't know. I'm just going to keep going here. I don't see anything in there. So in theory, this should just slide off. Yeah, okay. Yeah, look at that. There is no set screw on this. Very interesting. A little tight. Yep, there we go. Let's go ahead and get this lamp replaced while we're here. And we've got our new replacements from dgwojo.com. Now, you all know I famously broke one of these when I was replacing it in my how to relamp your X3X Marant or Pioneer video. So let's see if I do the same thing again. I think what I can do is I'm just gonna grab from like right here and pull the whole thing up. Wow, folks, that was really bizarre. Anyways, now I don't have to worry as much. See, look what I just did there. Now I can likely slide this metal thing out of the way, or the plastic thing, and there we are. I've got the housing out, and yeah, I'm gonna glue that back right now. Yeah, I honestly can't believe that just happened, but yeah, over here I've got it being glued with the super glue there, so that will come back, not a big deal. Let's keep on replacing that lamp. We can lift up these metal guys right here, one like that, and then one like that, and that'll give us some leeway to slide this around. And instead of pulling that through, I'm just gonna snip it, because we've got lots of lead on our new lamp. And now, instead of coming out the way I was trying to go, I can just pull that right out. Now, let's get the new lamp. We'll take this little thingy that was right there, we'll slide it over our new leads, like so. Run it to right here, and then we'll take these wires, run them through. Okay, there we are. And we will set this wire length once we have our tuner pointer re-glued, because we need to have enough length to kind of come around here and go in, but then, you know, not so much where there's so much wire right there. Next, what we'll do is we'll take off the dial face, and that's going to be at least these two screws. Yeah, I think I'll just take them off all the way. Oh, we've got these side pieces here. These I think I'll just loosen, and I'll get this one. Yeah, there's that little bit of glue we're hearing. And we just carefully remove that. We'll put this in a safe place because we really don't want that getting scratched. So I've got that off, and I'll show you the fuse lamps. They are in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And they used that piece of sheet metal right there to reflect the light. So there's no vellum paper in these. I think that's a much better design than what Marantz did. Then of course we've got two fuse lamps back here, so I think I'll just go for those right now. That should be pretty simple. It's much easier to put them in than it is to take them out. Okay, it's a little tough to show you the meter fuse lamps, but these are a little bit easier. All I do is I just kind of go in on the side, kind of like so, press down on the metal part, and then just kind of bring down the rest, and it kind of rolls out. And those are out now, but as you can see, my fingerprints left some stuff, so we're going to take a wet paper towel and wipe that out so that we have better reflecting. Yeah, much better. So now we'll just take the new ones and pop them in. It can be a little tricky to get these ones in, but if you just use 2 fingers, I'm using my index fingers, it just kind of comes together once you get it centered. And there you go. Look at that. Now before we test out these lamps, I want to get this guy connected right here. So we're going to do some cute little butt splices on the new tuner pointer bulb here. I'm going to get my length right so I know where to cut. And then I'm going to add like a centimeter to that because you can never have too much. You can always cut it shorter if it actually is too much. Because, well, okay, sometimes you can have too much. But anyways, to do a butt splice on these, we're going to strip all 4 of these cut wires here. Then we're going to take some of the heat shrink tubing that Dave included in his kit, and we're going to cut 2 little pieces, maybe a little under 1 inch long. Just enough to cover up our splice. And we're going to slide each one of those over one of the wires. Then we're going to kind of wrap the wires around each other. I kind of start with this little X right here, and then start pulling one end down, pulling the other end down, and just wrapping them together. And this is really difficult to do with this really tiny wire. I like how that's sitting right now, so I'm going to go ahead and solder it now before I touch the other one. I'll just take my tip, kind of put it above it a little bit, put some solder in there, and there. That's pretty good right there. Yep, I like that a lot. Can you see that? Yeah, well, almost. Come on, camera. You can do it. There. Looks like that. And then we'll just take our heat shrink tubing, slide that over. We'll get that with the heat gun in just a minute here. But first we gotta do the other one. Oh, I forgot to kind of twist my wires around each other. That's something I should have. I should have kind of twisted the wires around so they're one wire, but I forgot to do it. But anyways, here's the heat gun. Keep it away from the string. You don't want to break your tuner string because then you're in for a whole other job you really didn't plan on doing. And it's not a nice job. It's a tedious one. Okay, so there's that. Tuner pointer lamp is replaced. So let's take a look and see if all of our lamps are working. Okay, we're on the dim bulb. Let's see. Wow, look at that. I like that a lot. So, you know, we only had 4 of those 6 last time, and we always had that, but we did not have that. So, very good. Well, I got it back on, but it was painful. It might break again, I don't know. Let's get the little guide rail thing back on here. So, definitely should have done that not first. Should have done dial face and these side guys first. But, you know, it is what it is. Okay, let's check again just to make sure we've actually got these still working. And we do. Nice, full, complete lighting. And a tuner pointer. So, now that that's done, now we can actually get back to looking at this preamplifier board and seeing what's going on there. And yeah, I just looked at the service manual and there are 2 SA725s on this board. So we want those gone. That is going to be this board right here. So we'll need to take off these little felt guys and start undoing some screws. I can never remember what exactly you're supposed to do on these. Like, which screws do you take out? Is it these ones? Is it other ones? Okay. Looks like it's going to be those 4 screws. And let's slide this out and up. And there we are. Ooh, we have a protective cover. Pull that off, and what do we have? Right here we've got the preamplifier board. I think what I'm mostly just going to do on this is get rid of these 2. Those are the transistors that are known to go bad, and they'll send just awful, terrible things through the amplifier. Since all the caps on this amp have been, you know, remarkably good, honestly, I think I'm just going to leave it alone other than the transistors. And that sounds kind of backwards, you know, normally you recap things. Why would you retransistor things? Well, in this series of receivers, that is what I find to be the right thing to do in my experience working on them. So that is what I'm going to do, and that's going to keep costs low for this repair. You know, it's kind of interesting, this preamplifier has FETs too. These are your FETs. So we're actually only going to replace these 4 things. And we're going to replace those with KSA992 and KSC1845. I've got some right here. I have already measured the gains on them. I'm going to find a matched pair. You don't have to do that right here, but I'm going to anyways, just because, you know, I've got these all marked, so might as well. And you got to be careful because the transistors you pull out are base collector emitter, and KSC1845s and KSA992s are emitter collector base. And then just a friendly reminder to always check the wires going to your board before you put it back, because oftentimes, well not oftentimes, but sometimes this will happen. That went right there, so I need to make sure I strip this and reattach it, because we don't want to be without that. I think I'll do that after I put this back in like this, since I'm done with this board. And there, that's a little easier to get to. Oh, forgot to put my protective cover back on. Jeez, how could I? Okay, we've done a lot of stuff to this receiver at this point. We've touched 1, 2, 3, 4 different boards and changed the lights. What I'd like to do at this point is just test it out, make sure everything is still working, and address any issues that may be present in this receiver now that we've done all this stuff. So we'll stay on the dim bulb. We'll come on up. We power on. We relay click. We have a little bit of AC hum because there's no covers on. A little static too. Here's FM. Sounds good. And again, that's no antenna hooked up, so tuner is very healthy, very happy. So I will test the Phono preamp at the end, because it doesn't really make a difference if I find issues there now or later, and I don't think I'll find any issues in there. That's going to be a night for me. Next, we will change out the filter capacitors. We'll redo the power amplifier board. Okay, time for the power amplifier board. The way we're going to go about this is there's some screws that mount the heatsink to the chassis of the receiver. We're going to undo those. We're going to undo these guys right here. These are your temperature sensing varistors or whatever. And you want to be pretty careful with these, because if you break that lead, you're in trouble. Then we'll have to undo the output transistors as well. That's going to be on the back side. Okay, this is loose. Those are loose. Let's get the board loose now. Let's see what that gets us. So yeah, we're loose, but there's a bunch of wires down here that are kind of holding the board in place still. So there's a cover right here that I think I'll take off. Not quite enough room. I think we'll need to remove the heat sink from these brackets here. Okay, now the heat sink is free. We can kind of swing it up like this. And at this point, we're going to want to remove the output transistors, because that's how we're going to be able to access the back of this board is once these are out of the way. We're going to keep these in order so we can put them back properly later. Now, this should just lift right off. Yep, just like that. And here's our little connectors here. And now this should separate. There's some random wire just wrapped around this thing. Wow, that was quite a bit of work. More work than I thought it was going to be. But yeah, we're here. Okay, so we're looking at a few things here. We're looking at these guys. These are your bias transistors. They are a 2SC1451, I believe. You don't want them there. You want those replaced with a KSC3503. And then these guys right here are your differential pairs. You want to replace this pair and this pair with matched pairs. And those are going to be replaced with KSA992. They are currently 2SA726. And then while we're in here, we're going to check the capacitors and make sure those are still up to snuff. And when we go to put this back together, we will do the thermal compound on these, since these are in just, I don't even know what's going on there for thermal compound. It's all dried up and weird looking. I mean, like, you see that, it's like falling apart all over everything, so don't want that. Alright, it's ready to go back together. I just want to show you what happened. So the output transistors, they had to come out, and their original micas and thermal compound were in very questionable conditions, so they had to be replaced. So we've got fresh Dow 340 on there with a brand new mica on all four. You guys have seen me do this plenty of times, so I didn't show it. And here's all the parts we replaced. I actually decided to recap the entire thing, because I measured some of the smaller ones, like these blue ones right here. These were actually in the signal path, and their ESR was coming back about double what a new capacitor was coming out as, so I figured those were getting a little questionable. The big ones all tested fine, but I replaced them anyways because it was easy to get to, and since it's kind of a lot to get to this point, I figured it's probably best that I just do all the capacitors on this board. Well, we've got a beggar. We've got a visitor. What's up, big guy? What do you want? Hey, who's been fed? Who's been fed? You. That's right. You have indeed been fed. How do you like the new house, Hodor? How do you like the new house? You know what's great about Hodor? You could just knock him over and start giving him belly rubs. Like, just knock him over. And he doesn't care. He just gets all the belly rubs. Right? He's a good boy. Where was I? Oh yeah, so we've got the bias transistors replaced. Those are those square ones right there. And then we've got the differential pairs replaced. And you can see we've got Nichicon PW where all the gray Alanas were, which were kind of for power. And then down here we've got Alana Silmix 2s for those two signal path capacitors. And if you're asking the question, because I'm kind of having trouble with it too myself, like why did you do this to this board and you didn't do anything else to the preamplifier board? Well, it's tough when you're doing stuff like this. You need to make calls, and the arrangement for this particular unit was not restoration. It was just get it reliable, get it up to speed, give it necessary things. So I have to figure out how to walk a line between what's absolutely necessary and what's probably a good idea also. So for that board it was the transistors. On this board it was transistors and capacitors and this. So just trying to keep costs low, that's all. So I guess I'll do a time lapse of me struggling to put this back together. And then the last thing we have to do is the filter capacitors. I feel like yakety sax. I should have been playing that entire time. I forgot to put the output screws back in and had to go back and redo that. I put this shield back in, but I need to have it off in order to get to one of the bolts on here, on the filter capacitors. So we will put it back in as soon as I'm done with that. I've removed the fasteners from up top, so now I'm just going to cut these wires. And I know that they're discharged because they have resistors on them, so I don't even need to check. So we'll just, also I took a picture of this so I know what goes where, and here they are. So we're going to have to transfer these brackets to the new ones right here. And of course, if you've watched my how to replace filter capacitors video, that video is exactly how I came to these replacements. Just searched until I found something that worked. But one thing we are going to need to do is we're going to need to attach some ring terminals to these wires. And on this one you saw this wire was connecting the negative lead of the one cap to the positive lead of this one. And then this is just going straight to ground. So I think what I'll do is I'll reuse this wire and I'll just run it straight to ground on there so I have less terminals on this one. It's this nice solid core wire that they used, so it's very easy to strip, very easy to work with, but if you bend it too much, it might break. And for this job I do not have a proper crimp tool. I also don't exactly have proper ring terminals right now, but I have a lot of these and it'll work just fine. So basically what we're going to do, and what I mean by that is this should be closed, but it's open, but when you tighten the screw it's fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get an initial crimp here, and again I don't have the right crimp tool, but it's going to be okay, I'll show you. And I try to come down in a way where I can really trap that wire. I'm going to put these all on real quick. So now that we have them all like that, we can go ahead and take the soldering iron, and we're just going to heat up each one. I guess I'll start here, and we'll run some solder along the crimp area. And that's what makes this okay. I mean, crimps at the end of the day are to take the place of something like solder, so this makes it extremely strong when you add solder like this. And I'm just heating this up until I see it flowing all the way through. Like I can touch right here where the tip isn't even touching. I can see that it's melting. And then once I can poke like right here and it starts to melt, yeah, see, there you go. And it's taking it. That is a nice strong solder connection. Okay, let's flip it on its side and start working on getting our capacitors clocked properly with the brackets. So that means, you know, does it go like this? Does it go like this? Like this? You know, that's the question. Okay, I think I'm happy with how they're clocked, so now I'm going to reference the photo I just took. We're going to see if this is going to work pretty well, so I think I will start putting this stuff together. Yeah, not too bad. Looks pretty clean to me. I'm happy with that. Now let's hope I wired that correctly, right? Yeah, we're done with the electrical changes now, so now we can flip this over and test it out. But we're not going to want to hook up speakers just yet because we just messed with the power amplifier. And since we messed with the power amplifier, that means our bias and DC offset could be off. Well, they probably will be off since we changed transistors. And there's a chance that we messed something up also. So, obviously we hope that that didn't happen. Messing things up is never fun, because then you have to figure out what it is that you messed up. Now, let's see what happens. Silly me. Let's do that first. Okay. Good, good. Relay click. Very good. Capacitor's not exploding. Even better. Okay. Let's start by checking DC offset, because that's easy. The A speakers are turned on, so we can measure across the A speakers. On the right channel we have 82 millivolts, which is more than we had before. That can be adjusted. And then on the left we have 67. So not bad numbers. I need to look in the service manual to see how you check the bias. It wants you to check between pins 3 and 4, but really all you have to do is measure the drop across the emitters of the outputs, which are easily accessible right here. So one emitter's in the middle, another emitter is also in the middle, and we have 17 millivolts. It's supposed to be 30, so I'm just going to leave that right there. And then let's check the left channel. 17 again. So that's great. Let's go ahead and adjust that DC offset value. DC offset is going to be your middle potentiometers right there. So let's get a properly sized tool for that. And let's go ahead and adjust for the right channel. And look at that. That's one fun thing about some receivers is you can make the adjustment, and like the momentum of you moving the pot kind of makes the whole thing go crazy for a second. So you got to be very patient with how you do that. So here's the left channel. Like, see how it goes crazy. You know, it goes super negative, then it comes back to reality. So I went a little too far, but if I do this, I can make it go super positive, and then it comes back down. So, pretty goofy. Ooh, yeah, I'm leaving that right there. And again about the bias. I'm not going to set that just yet. I want to run the amplifier, let it warm up a little bit, and then we can set the bias after that's happened. I just wanted to make sure that it's a lower number so we don't run like super hot, and we are not running super hot. If your bias was really high, there'd be a lot of current going across your output transistors, and that would turn into heat. That's why you have this heat sink right here. So let's hook our speakers back up now that we know they're okay. They're both working, and sounds great. I like it. Okay, let's go back to aux and make sure that input is still working right, because we had some issues with that being super dirty. I wonder if we'll need to clean it yet again. It's time for everybody's favorite song. Yeah, it's working. I need to do some cleaning on here. I gotta get this dust out. Gotta get the faceplate back on, the covers back on. And then we need to do some testing. See how much power it's making. See if we see any weird stuff in the waveform. And of course we've got to reset the DC offset and bias off of the dim bulb, because the dim bulb is going to throw that off slightly. I think I am gonna add resistors, because look what happens when I measure across these. Like, that voltage is not changing at all. It's not something you always want. Most receivers, they have something to discharge these when you turn it off. And that is this. I know in the Marantz 240 I just did, those were on a circuit board. And now that we've got even stronger capacitors in here, we probably want to do something about that. I've got these right here. These are 5 watt 33 or 5 watt 3.3K resistors. We see that the old one is, should say 2.7K. It does. I don't have a 2.7, but I have this 3.3. I don't think it really matters that much. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I will add these. There we go. I would have done this by, putting the lead actually through the crimp and crimping the resistor with the wires, but I was not thinking straight. I'm glad those are there now, and the microphone is charging, so I switched to the camera mic, just like the good old days. We've got this thing ready to go for the power test. We've got the scope hooked up. We've got 8 ohm loads across the back. This is a 50 watt per channel amplifier. Let's bring this up and see when we see clipping. At what voltage do we see clipping? I'm just using the phone app for this because that generator I have is not that great, as we saw in a previous video. It looks like we gotta come down a scale. And there's our clipping right there. That's very healthy looking clipping, so I like that. I'd say it starts right about there. So that's 23.5 volts AC, actually. Yeah. More like that. Let's call it 23, or 22.9. Let's go throw that into the calculator and see what that equals. All right, 22.9 equals 65 watts per channel. That is, I don't know about you, but I think that's a lot more than 50. Okay, let's switch over to the left channel and see what we've got going on over there. Now, to be clear, if I had more than one multimeter, I could do these both at the same time and have these both on the scope at the same time, but I don't know, maybe I should spend the money. If you all like and subscribe, I'll have more money to spend on stuff like this. Okay, left channel, yep, we gotta bring that one down also. And there's the clipping. Bring it down. Yeah, we see it happening around 22.9, maybe 23, just like the other channels. So, yeah, we've got ourselves a 65 watt per channel amplifier. This heatsink is cool, to my surprise. I feel no heat on here, but I did just power this up for the first time since we saw it last in the video, which is the next day. So, also off camera, I set the bias on this to 25 millivolts on each channel. The service manual wanted 30. I always like to go a little bit lower just to improve efficiency. You know, it won't draw so much power. And if we see weird stuff happening here, then we can, you know, make some adjustments. But I don't see anything weird happening there. Let's get it off the load resistors. Let's take a listen and talk about how it sounds. Well, there you have it, folks. Another X3X Pioneer brought back into reliable condition. I'm always happy to get these on the bench because, well, one, I know them and they're kind of easy to work on, so it's not terribly challenging, which is nice, but, you know, not to say I don't like a challenge. And two, they just look awesome. I really love the way these things look. I kind of cleaned up the faceplate a little bit, not too much, but, you know, removed a lot of the dust. And took a Q-tip to all the crevices. I will say, though, these receivers are not my favorite sounding Pioneer receiver. The 737s and 636s I've worked on many of. They all kind of have like this interesting sound signature where mids get kind of harsh as you get higher into the volume, but at a low regular listening volume, bass is just massive, treble is super clear. And if you're not going to listen, you know, super loud all the time, these are, you know, truly incredible sounding in my opinion. But if you want to have better high volume listening, you might want to look at something else, maybe more powerful amplifier. You know, at only 50 watts per channel, it's no slouch, but it's not the, you know, most powerful thing in the world. But in conclusion, we removed every problematic transistor in this receiver. We got those off of the protection circuit board, the Phono preamp, the preamplifier, the power amplifier. We did not recap this receiver, but we did replace capacitors that we saw were in trouble, like the filter capacitors. So now this thing has a huge upgrade. I really wish I had taken a before power test to see if it runs any better with a filter capacitor that's, you know, actually within spec. I'd be curious to see how this thing performed on the scope with that old capacitor being at 6,000 microfarad versus the required 8,000. Now it's got two 10,000 microfarad capacitors, so that should help the power amplifier get what it needs in terms of power. We did not touch the tuner board because the tuner appears to work perfectly as is, but we did clean the controls and we did replace the fuse lamps. We left the indicators alone because they're kind of a pain to replace, and they all work, so no need really. Okay, I think that's about it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you have questions, please let me know in the comments, and I will see you in the next one.